presentation and there I can be. First of all, apologize because of the heat wave. Mark is stuck literally now on the Eurotunnel, so he cannot be there. He was earlier with us in the morning, but looks like there are like some delays in general. But I will be super glad to be hosting today meetings. The first part, the opening. Later on, we need like to move to this other dinner. But it's really good to see you. I think we have 50 people live, but I think we will have much more people to join us. But let's start on time. So you're like giving some words, as you know, like we created the VB community 6 years ago. I think that many of you and we are gonna play a very short video. It's a 1 minute video, but many of you have been in this journey for a long time. Some of you have been like recently joining us in different parts of the globe. By the way, if you want to put your LinkedIn, which country you are typing, but I know that we have people from Singapore to Brazil. I am seeing here lots of fellow VAB members. And it is a pleasure for me to host today. But today, the main reason is really to talk about portfolio career. I think that Andrea and Brady will make the proper introduction. But I think that Andrea, you have been navigating and supporting lots of executives on really what does this mean? Is it really what is the concept of portfolio career? We know that VAB it's much more related with advisory and boards, but this is a part of the full ecosystem. So there is much more opportunity, CFO, CEO, CPO, interim roles, writing a book, being a keynote speaker. And I think that many of you have been doing this. But before we go there, Natalie, if we move with the next slides, we prepared just small presentation. This is especially for some of the guests that we have in the room, right? Callum, I will introduce him in a bit and mute myself because we are in the same area. So he will invite you like to join for a call. We want like to understand more also your journey. But besides the number, right? 1,400 members in 6 years for a community. I never use the word company or business because VAB was built really with passion. I think that has been like many years that we have actually like thank you to my staff. The staff, Brady, I think that you joined us what on the first week of the 2020 in February 2020, correct? Yeah. So I think that many of us we have been like navigating this together. VAB is not a back business. We don't have like any investment behind private equity. It's really all about passion. Mark and I we started, created, and of course with the team we built something very special. And it's not easy to say, but right now like we have 1,400 members, 80 countries, new chapters, but also to say that we made a recent survey, and in the recent survey, we have over 6,000 active boards or advisory board positions occupied by the VAB members. And always like the idea when we created VAB, when I received that call in 2020 by Mark, when I was living in London, was really like to create a safe space with confidence. And I think that we have been creating this really well because our premise always, and we will never stop repeating this, same as Harvard, INSEAD, and many institutions, that 80% of the chances for you to get into this next step will be coming with this meaningful networking. And sometimes we don't see it, but your next proposition, and we have seen the stories with the members, that it's perhaps on a second degree connection from you. So it's super important that you can really navigate. I think that what VAB really offers is about like you being connected with chairperson, with non-executive directors across the globe and talking about governance, what's happening with AI, with the future of work and so on. And that's why we have been hosting lots of events, over 720 meetings in person. Thank you to the ambassadors. Carla, I think that I'm going to meet you, Carla, because I saw you here previously. But also John Stamil, right? Like in New York, that you guys have been like really supporting us. I mean, like, you are not paid at all, and you are always there like, hey, what are we going to do next? And I have this idea. So it's really a clear collaboration. Also, big shout here to Juliana, to Camila, to Saiva. It's your, they are like your member experience manager, your concierge. Amazing job. They have been making over 3,300 connections of people. And sometimes you don't see it again, right? But it's impossible for others to track it. But sometimes you see that Giuseppe, for example, Istigliano, that I introduced perhaps to Patricia Menezes in Brazil, they were 4 weeks ago hosting an event, doing a little bit of business together, together with, I think it was with Mondelez. And then you see also Ricardo Ribas from Brazil with an introduction, talking and making also relevant connections in Greece. So you start like seeing really these connections happening. So it's very tailor-made. So huge congratulations to the team. And also our expert networks has expanded. At the beginning was, and I think that everybody knows it was very David show, Mark-oriented show. By the way, I think that all of you, you know that Mark is our CEO. I stepped down as a CEO Since February, I am still with a very active role as a board member and supporting Callum on the expansion of VAB. This is my new focus. But since then, we move from this thing of David's and Mark's show into much more what you guys want, right? And the reason of why you were staying, and even like some people decided like also like to leave, we needed like to understand, hey, what they want. And it's a lot about the conversation today. It's about portfolio career and checking other avenues. That's why also we created new expert networks. So we have the energy one, the entrepreneurs network that was launched recently, much more technology, much more AI. Big shout to you, Gabriel, also together with Micaela, like leading all the technology part. Good, Natalia, let's go. I promise that I don't want it to be very extended. Some of them I just will mention. This is the psychological journey. Big shout to you, Brady. You prepare a really great document. It's available in the platform. If you are not signed up, still you can download it. You will need like, to register some of your details. But it's all about like what it really means this, and Andrea will reinforce, of course, with her own experience. So if we move to the next one. And all to me, it's about like moments, right? Like here are like some pictures. Here you can see like really what we are building. It's all about like really putting the high caliber leaders together in the community. Those are like 6 things that we have learned from reinvention in this new space. Relationships compound, community matters. The next chapter really looks like the previous one. So never assume that people knows that you are transitioning. I always say this, VAB, it is like a gym, right? Like some people come, pays, and they say, hey, I want to lose like 7 kilos, but they don't use their board muscle. And that's like impossible like for you to receive opportunities if you are not active. So my recommendation to anyone in this room, 3-4 hours, talking with your member experience manager, perhaps like once every 2 months at least, to stay tuned also on your development and career. Next one, Natalia, please. And I think that Natalia, you created this lovely video. Let's watch it.
First virtual advisory board global conference call or global video call. We shared a passion for people, for stories, for building, for growth.
Nice to meet you guys virtually. Nice to see some friendly names, if not faces.
And thanks to everyone for the time. So I'm Ahmed, as Mark mentioned.
I mean, one day you get a call from Mark telling you, hey, there's this new community I'm setting up. Get a member.
Thanks, David. Thanks, everyone, for joining today.
Happy birthday, VIB. Wishing you many more successful years ahead.
Happy birthday, VAB. Huge congrats to Mark and David for having successfully managed such a great organization, offering great insights, great connections, face-to-face meeting, virtual trainings, and more. And I enjoy every second of being part of that. Looking forward to the next 6 years. Cheers, guys.
Happy birthday, VAB. Parabéns. Sucesso.
Hi, I'm Giovanni King. It is my pleasure to congratulate Virtual Advisory Board on behalf of Curaçao, the Blue Wave Nation.
Happy anniversary to you. Happy anniversary to you. Happy anniversary, dear VAB. Happy anniversary to you.
Lovely, lovely. Natalia, thank you also to you for organizing the events. You made like the things happen and the magic. And to Drew also for that beautiful last song as well. And Natalia, I think that now like we can skip this one, please. We move to the presentation with Andreia. But before I'm going to call just Callum. Callum, if you're around, I'm going to mute myself. And over to you, my friend. And also, Callum, to you, to Pedro, to Kesha. Amazing. You are like onboarding over 300 people. But for you to qualify 300 people, you talk with 1,000 of people. So really congratulations on the great work, Callum.
No, thank you, David. I really appreciate it. And I've got to say before I kick things off, it's great to have Andrea here. I'm really excited about having a talk. I think it's very haphazard. I think we reached out on LinkedIn and just to see her becoming part of this great community, but also her contributing today is fantastic. So really excited for that. But yeah, I'm the global director for VAB. So really my role with my team is to look at safeguarding the community with the best talent coming into the community. And like David said, it's very safe space where we kind of look to take our members behind the curtain, in those closed room conversations where a lot of those board opportunities and kind of thought leadership aspects kind of lie as well. So really excited personally to be with VAB for 2 years. And yeah, it's an incredible community, I must say. I must want to say one thing I absolutely love about VAB, and all credit to Mark and David, is the global nature of the community, but instill the cohesive community feel of which VAB is. Everyone is here to kind of look out for one another without kind of wanting something in return. Response rates are good, fantastic, great engagement rates as well, which is testament to Camilla and her team. So honestly, absolutely fantastic. I think there's some really exciting changes to happen, coming in a couple of months. So really looking forward to that. On the screen here is a QR code for a link to mine and David's calendar. So anyone who's not a VAB member yet and that's interested in how they want to develop their portfolio career, develop in terms of the board space, take a picture, book in a meeting. Again, this is much more of a conversation about where you're heading, where VAB could potentially add value, seeing if there is a fit and going from there. But honestly, absolutely fantastic to be part of this amazing organization. I must say it's my most favorite job I've ever had. Looking forward to the next 6 years and yeah, going from there. So thank you, David. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Andreia. And thank you, Brady. I'll pass over to you. So
I like, and before we pass to Ray, I like that you said that your favorite work, because it took me like 3 years for me to convince you to come and work with me back after working in London.
Yeah.
Amazing. Brady, before I pass to you, just like finalizing, I think that also big recognition with Mark. Like, I mean, Mark and I, like, believe it or not, but since 6 years ago, we talk every single Sunday. Hey, how are we doing? What are we gonna do? And he's full of ideas. He's a serial entrepreneur. He built this ecosystem, the Naked Headhunter, my fractional CEO, leadership transition, CEO coffee. So great things are being working right now behind the scenes. So we hope that we're gonna get like some advertisement soon to all of you. But if VAB is good, just get ready for what is gonna come next. Okay. For a long time to VAB, and cheers everyone. Brady, over to you, and Andreia, millions of thanks. Muito obrigado para você.
Hello, everyone. It's my pleasure to introduce you to Andreia Fernandes, who is the founder of the Portfolio Career Institute. I just met Andreia for the first time earlier today. Interesting journey. She's recently joined a member of the VAB community, working out of Switzerland, but she got there via Portugal, so an interesting background. She's a renowned TEDx speaker. She's a board member, facilitator, keynote speaker, author, and consultant. So she's basically the epitome of what it means to have a multifunctional portfolio career. So it only makes sense that she's going to take us on this journey today for designing your portfolio career. Andreia, the floor is yours, and thank you again for your time.
Thank you very much, Brady, and hi everyone. And while I share my presentation earlier, you just said something beautiful, David. Relationships compound, right? And I think it's my first month as a member. I can't remember the exact date, and I've been already having some very interesting calls with people. I have already been, speaking to lots of members, and this is really nice. Thank you also for all of you who reach out via LinkedIn, who, there are some podcasts that I'm publishing currently, so feel free to also ask me questions after that. Let's start with my presentation. We don't need this. I'd like to start with a little question in the chat. Who of you also attended VJ's session this morning? Is there anyone who was also there? So I was telling them, the team earlier, I was there. I just had to mute myself. I was making lunch for my kids while listening, and I thought it's very inspiring what he said, right? And it's really about that journey of reinvention. I can only support what he said. And what's interesting is, if you were there, our talks are very much complementary. And maybe what's important, I mean, he said something really nice. He started with, well, at VAB, everyone's profile is super impressive. And that's an important point to start, because it also kind of frees us from, from that need of having to perform. And I want to invite you all to a big question, which is, hey, what do we actually mean when we want to have a life well lived, right? When we look back at that. So you see, I'm starting with a book tip. I mean, for the summer months, you may want to read. This is the Harvard longitudinal study. It's the longest time ever they have followed up people, some from like childhood to death. So super interesting. And they kept asking, hey, what makes a life well lived? What makes us happy, right? And spoiler, it's also complicated life, but in a good way, because if we embrace all those things that are hard and grow through them, we get better. And it's also much more about contentment than just happiness, which is single steps. So I really think it's also good sometimes to just take that step back and, think about it just as human beings and get down on earth. And then, of course, let's move to the next question. Well, okay, but what does that mean in terms of having a career? And what's interesting here, of course, is, it's a long-term, actually, usually lifelong journey, right, where we also evolve. So reinvention is also the new normal in some way. And it's really important to kind of learn how to embrace that. Just maybe think a second, think of someone whose career really inspires you. And then think back, whoa, was it a straight line for them to get to where they are? That's usually quite interesting, right? How this really helps us also embrace those moments where we're kicked out of our comfort zone and actually really get into that phase of growth. And that's important, because I come a bit from that behavioral perspective. And I just had someone in my webinars for my course, and she said something interesting. She was like, well, most tools you're showing now that you will do in your course, I know them already. I've tried it all alone. It doesn't work. I need the community. And that's why it's so great that we're all here and have this community to be part of it. But yeah, I think that's important questions, just also to always keep in mind and to get back to them. But of course, that's not why we're here, right? We're here to talk about the portfolio career, what it actually is. And let me start with myself. I will bring you through a little lifeline journey. And it's going to be actually interesting. So this is me at 16. To the right, you see me. Fun fact, I'm building a lamp here that still today is my desk lamp. So I built something super sustainable because it's a long time ago. I was 16 years old. What's interesting, that's where I knew I want to work globally. That was in me. I didn't know exactly what it's going to look like. So Georg Fischer, if you ever heard of the company, it's huge also in Brazil, by the way. They are huge. They're kind of in the related to the construction business. And I knew I want to work globally. Then fast forward a couple of years, I'm working for a consulting firm. I live in Munich, work for BMW amongst others. And honestly, work was so boring from the outside, right? If you think of the iceberg theory, everybody would have said, wow, she studied international management. She's doing something amazing. And I always thought, this is so boring. This is not what I want, because I wanted to have impact. So my portfolio career was already growing inside out, right? I was working globally, but not yet with that purpose that I wanted. So fast forward another couple of years, I went out of consulting because I thought there must be more to it. Did a double degree at University of St. Gallen and ESADE Barcelona. And this was great because it was, again, intercultural and was giving me first ideas for entrepreneurial ventures. I started to work as a global manager for a medtech company. So I was commuting between Neuchâtel and Silicon Valley, which was an interesting time. And I got closer to what I wanted. But very honestly, also there, we had, during the 4 years I was there, we had 3 different CEOs, whereof one of them then was arrested after the FBI had investigated for 5 years. So that was also interesting. It felt a bit like a telenovela, but it was real. And it was really interesting also to observe what's going on in terms of corporate governance, I started to observe how is that board reacting, you know, to all this news. How much do they know? And that brought me to a next step, to a next point. So I left that company, founded my own, actually had 2 startups. And here you see me a couple of years later. This was super interesting. I got accepted to a Stanford program. And fun fact, it kind of ended the last day I was allowed to fly back pregnant. So that was I was like, okay, the universe really wants me to do it. So I spent a week in Stanford. Before that, I went to Los Angeles, as you can see. And what you see here, by the way, is not a bra, it's a bag. And this was a circular economy startup I started many years back. It doesn't exist anymore, but this was already the start of my portfolio career, where I knew, hey, I want to build this portfolio. And by the way, yeah, part of the portfolio is also being a mom. So despite adding complexity, it also really added flexibility and freedom. And I think that's very important to keep in mind. And yeah, fast forward a couple of years, my company Cbrand is meanwhile turning 14. Sexy little bag, the bra startup. I said it failed. I discontinued it, but with the Portfolio Career Institute, I'm very actively supporting organizations, because, you know, one thing is all of us trying to build our portfolio career, but probably you also feel it that many organizations aren't ready yet, right? And that's really an important approach also, that I want to get our labor work ready. And yeah, sometimes I'm part-time employed. I'm, for example, a lecturer where I have a mandate at the University of Zurich, at the ETH, the technological university, where I do various things. So it's also not about to be or not to be employed, but really about having the content driven work that where we really can contribute, deliver value, and that was always important for me. So yeah, whom are you talking to? So I think I said most of it, and what's probably interesting is that was now kind of the journey in terms of a timeline, but how my knowledge integrates. I've always worked at the intersection of strategy and leadership. My topics are, for example, a book chapter with a methodology of entrepreneurial failure, which really connects that. I work as a coach, of course, do lots of facilitation. And what I always saw is, okay, how would I introduce myself to someone, right? That's usually where a lot of people struggle. And yeah, if we go further, right, I really thought, okay, which of the companies should I mention? Which of the nationalities? Which is the important part? And for me, it was always connecting the dots between strategy and leadership. And that's really the sweet spot of things that I can offer. And that's also why my clients come to me, right? They know I can facilitate the workshop in German in the morning. And for the other team, I do the same in English in the afternoon, looking into helping for better collaboration from an intercultural perspective. And that's really where I see the value. And then back to portfolio careers, right? That's not what it looks like. Clearly not, right? And all those curves are part of the learning. And I think that's so important. How do we explain ourselves to others? And in my case, as said, it's strategy and leadership. And what I bring is really that 360-degree perspective. So tomorrow, for example, I have a coaching. I have quarterly sparrings with some leaders here in Switzerland. And this is the person who is leading a team of, I think, 350 people. It's one of the big insurance companies. And we've been working together. He used to be the chief risk officer. Today is the chief financial officer of that company. So it's listed on the stock market. And it's really interesting sometimes to discuss topics with him where I can tell him, hey, as a lecturer, I can tell you that the next generation, my students, look at this topic from a totally different perspective. Like even when we talk about AI, and that's really been the value of focusing on certain skills, but looking at them from different perspectives, right? So I really have from very young people, usually the early 20s, my students, up to executives that I can guide. And that's really important to make sure what is the sweet spot we have. But let's go on. I mean, I asked what is a portfolio career in your opinion, and now I'm also curious to hear, are there any definitions? I'm just checking the chat if anyone has written something. I see lots of LinkedIn connections. That's great. I'll also make sure I join you all. But does anyone have like a one sentence definition of what a portfolio career could be? Would anyone like to share? Maybe you have something, and yeah. Taking a sip.
Maybe just to help out, if anybody wants to use the raise hand function,
yeah,
you can use that
totally.
so we can easily identify you.
And try to help. For me, hi, how are you? Thank you for sharing with us. For me, a portfolio career is a career where you're not gonna do just one thing. You are gonna do different things. So that's why you call a portfolio. So you're gonna do a consulting, you're gonna do an advisor, you're gonna do a speech, and so on.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, and that's really how we start, right? It's definitely doing more than one thing. And I want also to disclaim, not just that we probably all have one, but I didn't invent the term, right? It goes back to Charles Handy in, I think, 1994, exactly, where he speaks about a portfolio career having various different roles. And while I agree with that, for me, it was a bit more complex than that. So I did some research. I really looked into what other definitions are there. And what I came up with was, so how others define it. There were some that defined it into, it's about being self-employed versus just employed by someone. And I'd say, one thing has nothing to do with the other. It can even be a mix, right? The same with well, it's about working remote and no longer office-based. Even there, I can tell you, I have people in my portfolio program that joined me and they said, hey, I've been an entrepreneur now for 7 years and you know what, it's lonely. What would be an interesting role that I could add to my portfolio that helps me be part of a team, but still doesn't take all of my energy because I will want to remain a portfolio careerist. So what I came up with is the matrix you can see. And for me, it's a multi-dimensional thing, right? There's also not one way of having a portfolio career, but it's about the different roles you take either in different contexts or in different skills. And it could even be that you remain in your existing context with your existing skills. One good example here is usually you're a teacher and you teach at 2 different schools, right? You're already diversifying, you're de-risking. If you don't get along with the political structure of one school, you have the other. That could be one way. Then it could be that you move to different contexts. That's classic, for example. I know a mathematician that also works as a teacher, but also works as a mathematician for an insurance where he does risk models. That could be an idea, right? Of course, it can also include adding new skills. So I remember one person who really took on, was responsible for the whole marketing of a marketing department of a company and took on through new skills, also new responsibility, became the director of sales there. And then what really makes the portfolio is that he started to add manage other sales teams as well. So I think it's really important to see a portfolio career as having different roles in different organizations because the dependence is different as soon as that is distributed. And of course, you can have also both new skills and a new context. I know someone, she's a scientist and brews beer. And as a business, not just in her free time. So that's also one way to look at that. I think that's very important to remember because, all these dimensions really show how varied it can be. Very often, thanks, Ioannis, you're adding also extra volunteer roles. And so on the one hand, we have to say in Europe, the volunteer roles have a bit a different perspective than they have. For example, in the US, it's much more usual to have volunteer roles, and I think it can make sense if it's a strategic entry point, but usually we really look at portfolio careers also from that view, okay, in which stage? So in a later stage of life, like we are, if it's about building expertise, building also expertise, for example, as in the board of trustees of a foundation, right? Then this can totally be something that also brings you to a next step. So I totally agree. And what I often hear here as well is something like, you know, that sounds really nice, but in my profession or in my industry, this is not possible. And I have an answer for that, because I often thought, are there industries that can't work? And I've coached more than 500 people during my time as a coach for highly qualified job seekers. I had astrophysicists, I had dentists, I had one soccer coach from one of the famous local clubs that, you know, because they fired him, was unemployed. So I really saw so many different profiles, and it was never about their industry, but much more about the inner work we do, right? It's a process of redefining our own identity. And I think that's really the point. And on that aspect, let me share with you, there is even a study. It's an American study. I want to say that, yes, the European labor market works by different principles. But what's interesting, they qualitatively analyzed 48 multiple job holders, so-called multiple job holders. It's what we call portfolio careerists. And basically, that's also why I put my Insta and my portfolio LinkedIn links in the chat. Every Sunday, I introduce one of these personas, because I thought this study is so interesting, and it really shows it doesn't depend on which industry we are in. If we feel that urge to create a portfolio career, to work more by purpose, that can really be a way to go. And I think most of us here are, but sometimes you may feel, but is it really possible in my industry? Often the question comes, hey, will my clients take me serious or not, right? So it's really also about gradually moderating that and curating how you present yourself. And I think that's a very interesting point. And of course, knowing all that was interesting, but I started to wonder and started my own research. This is like a first part of it. I can share that later on. You see approximately 300 participants, about half knew what a portfolio career is, half did not know. And now what's interesting, at the beginning, most people felt like it's totally overwhelming. Portfolio careers are seen much harder to create. And probably we all can relate, right? If we create a portfolio, it's not that binary idea of looking just for a next job and really checking for the next promotion. It's about really finding out, hey, what do I want? And that's the inner work we need to embark on. Then, of course, it's not easy, but we can only recommend. And I put some testimonials here. They're all real. You can see them on my LinkedIn profile as well. But what's important is really what it does to the people, the inner change, right? Because, it takes a bit longer to build, but it's also really a ride we can learn to enjoy if we consciously embark on building our portfolio career. And I mean, let's be honest, by the time I did the survey, which was end of 2024 to 2025, AI was in its baby shoes compared to how we have it now, right? So most of this data will also look differently again. And, people like, for example, Hannah, that transitioned even from academia to industry, is undergoing very different experiences now. What's also important, yes, at the beginning, portfolio careers may offer less security, and they are underserved in corporate. But what's super important to remember is, this diversification mindset can really help. So my portfolio career has survived COVID. I have 2 kids, so yes, I took some breaks, and it was great to moderate. Which of the aspects will I keep? Which do I not keep? And why am I saying this? I know the VAB, the average VAB member is probably no longer in the family planning stage, but hey, you might want to care for another parent. You might want to take a break for whatever reason. You might have, I hope not, but if you have your own health issues, so it's good to have that portfolio of things where you can moderate where to reduce and where not. So that's really the idea to look at. And it's super important to really check for that flexibility. And so it's really about how to set it up, how intentionally you can plan your portfolio career. And one other last word, I didn't want to add more statistics, but one thing was very interesting. So we asked people, do you worry about your financial situation as a portfolio careerist? Is this a challenge? And what's interesting when comparing the data, how many people worry about it having a portfolio career compared to those participants who do not have a portfolio career. Portfolio careerists, 59% said, yes, I worry about the financial situation being a challenge, which makes sense. It represents the global momentum. But hey, from those people in corporate, it was 64. So just a difference of 5%, which is very interesting, right? So all those people who are in corporate and think of building a portfolio career, but are scared because of the financial situation. Well, that's equally, it remains the same stress factor. And what's even more important, as you can see here, and I think that really strikes something, right? 91% of the people I asked think portfolio careers are a persistent career model. Meaning it's not just when you're transitioning because you're looking for a new job. This is a career model that is here to stay. And I would dare to say it's not the hype. It's not a trend. It's really something to stay, because when we go through that, if we take the metro line of the future of work, we see so many elements that are part of it that will just show the future of work one alone. And some of you maybe lead teams. So what does it mean for you as an employer also? I think that's also an important perspective, right? As an employer, maybe already as an active board member, allowing portfolio careers. So despite your own, just taking that step will help you gain access to specialized expertise much more on demand, because those people who really have the expertise, they're harder to get full-time, and for a reason, right? It also gives you greater organizational agility. Building teams really is turning out to be much easier. It's also cost-effective. I mean, we know it from lots of startups asking for fractional roles, but why can't multinationals too have that, right? So it's getting there, which really goes together with employer attractiveness, because it goes beyond just allowing part-time work or job and top sharing, right? This is really that conscious decision of having people that give their expertise in different contexts. And it really brings you that broader perspective, that cross-industry insight. And I mean, I often see it that, you know, since I rebranded just my role as portfolio careerist, jobs found me. So I got approached by companies whether I would take on mandates or actually be employed part-time. And they always knew, hey, okay, we know you're not going to come full-time, but why not? And that really shows. So if we just focus on this one metro line, and you will get the slides, right? I know it's still very small, but you know, that whole idea of co-opetition, even there, and that's also where the wonderful conversations at VAB can happen, right? Sometimes we have similar profiles, and because we're pitching for a bigger project, we benefit from each other. Although maybe in theory we are competitors, we can do co-opetition, so we collaborate despite being competitors. Of course, all the digital aspects are here very important, and that human-to-human experience, right? People who approach me for mandates, they know about my personality, about my energy. And I think that's so important to be aware that, especially in times of AI, it's nice to have a CV, but people that see us, that can feel us and see how we think, that maybe experienced us, talking to them, that can really help. And yeah, why it matters, taking that step back again, looking at your role maybe as employer, but also as employee. It really shows, hey, job security is getting more and more important. This is one of the latest BCG studies, but we also see aspects like financial compensation have risen a lot, and that goes a bit in line with what I just said, my conclusion that, you equally worry no matter whether we have a portfolio career or not, right? And I think that's very important. And traditionally, portfolio careers came from, so-called working poor, right? And we are in a totally different era. I mean, those still exist, but what we're talking here is really of us being able, having that privilege of building portfolios based on the things we really like to do. And yeah, we gain job security through diversification. The good work-life balance really means it's about doing self-determined work. And believe me, I've had to say no to very well-paid mandates, but I knew the culture is soaking all my energy and focus. And it was the right decision because I had done the inner work and I knew, hey, under which conditions can I accept the job or not? And after 3 months, I left it, although I knew, hey, financially, I could have made a lot more money there, but that also gave me lots of energy to do other projects. And eventually, of course, I found something else. And also the financial part, once it's built, it's much more stable than a job. Because yeah, if you lose your job tomorrow, you have no salary at all, right? I think that's really important to keep in mind. And yeah, what does it mean to start with, right? Well, it's really about thinking in terms of paid roles. I like to focus on that because I believe unpaid roles can be a strategic tool, but it can make sense to have our career portfolio map. As you can see here, this is from an HBR article. I think the source is, no, it's there. It's not missing. It's there. And then also think in terms of, well, what does that mean, right? The income mix, how can I create it sustainably? And some people really go with the gray blue bar, right? Whereby they just gradually reduce one while they build the other until both roles are in the equilibrium you want. But it could also be that you say, no, I want more than 2 roles. More context, more skills to bring in use, and then you have various things, which is the cake approach, basically. Yeah, so there's different ways, and it's also important to think of those different ways from all the perspectives. What does it mean for us as board members, for our own career? What do we want to allow in the organization where we are board members, right? How much is even possible? And what regulations do we need? This is super important, right? I remember I was 2 years ago, I was in London at the conference presenting about portfolio careers, and there was one HR business partner who was really delusioned by portfolio careers. He was not going to do it again. And he explained why. Well, we allowed this one team member, he was employed part-time in our team, a videographer. And yeah, we allowed him to have his portfolio career, his business beside. Then after a couple of months, we found out he was offering his work through his own company within the same company, and we didn't want that. And, while I agree, okay, I've never had the conflict of interest because I have always proactively addressed that. That's so important because as a portfolio careerist, your reputation is the most important aspect, right? But there is this other side to it, which really means, hey, what rules and regulations, what do we expect from people? What are the do's and don'ts? And that's super important to have reflected it through. Let's say we don't want you to work for our direct competitor. We would want you to disclose that. Maybe the person has to work for a different industry. And there's lots of discussions I have nowadays with HR business partners that come for support. And I think it's important, once you've done that work and you have that clarity, you can really benefit from this type of talent. And yeah, back to the inner journey of portfolio career, I think it's super important to, it's not just a roadmap. I always say this is a flow map. And this is also a bit how I describe my program and what's important. I always say, hey, when we finish the program, it's when you're actually ready to start it. It's nothing is finished when you finish the program. You've simply done the inner work. And you see, it's a long journey, but the first 3 points are probably the most important because, yeah, knowing ourselves and often saying goodbye to our earlier identity that may be dependent on a role, dependent on certain companies. That's quite a journey. And I have this funny joke. When I'm in coachings and people write in their application letter or even, in the profiles, and I'm sorry, maybe some of you have that, ex-Google, ex-Meta. I always have this analogy, to me, it feels like as if we were on a first date and you would be spending all the time talking about your ex. I don't care. If Google was so good, why didn't you stay? And I mean, I know, meanwhile, lots of people have been fired. It's again different, right? So it's not just people who voluntarily left, but I think it's super important. It says something about you and about your ability to, create your own identity. And that's what's important. And when I say, for example, define your goal, the 4th point, it includes that question, hey, when would I realize that a portfolio career is actually not the right thing, right? And it's important. Is it for me or not? And based on what will I measure it? Because then the other steps, we all know, okay, it's about activating the network, having our positioning clear. We've probably all done that before, right? So it's really about doing that inner work. Without that, the outer work is much more or less technical, and we all can do that. And for me, it's really about, go from that confusion to clarity. And the process of confusion is important because this is where something is happening and where we're evolving, right? I had an interesting experience in Women's Month in March. I had a keynote for one of the big 4 companies. And what was interesting is it was about how we can cope with bias. And I asked them to just give me some adjectives that described either very female traits or very male traits. So we collected that, we had them on the wall. And then at the end, I simply, we had strong is of course male, emotional female, caring female, strategic was male. Then what I did was just changing female and male and asked them, okay, and now think of the strongest woman you know. Think of the most caring man you know. And they all realized, okay, this is starting to make us uncomfortable. And what was interesting was one of the participants came and said, well, you should not have done that. That really made us uncomfortable. And my reaction was, hey, congratulations. Realizing that we are in some way biased, right? Feels uncomfortable. So that inner work, once that starts, it feels uncomfortable. And that's also why I've really been trying to look at that behavioral side. And, it's really about imagining you're creating a career architecture, right? What do you want? So I have a canvas that you can really tailor to yourself and build confidence in explaining your career, because that's super important, right? And really have some tools also that can help you. So again, what does it mean for you as a board member, maybe also a non-executive board member? Hey, it's really about also maintaining a valuable mix maybe of deep expertise, but also broader exposure. I see it's a lot about, also seeing risks and opportunities early because you have a foot in different lakes. Have independent perspectives. I really see that a lot, that as soon as you're not just dependent from one company and your identity doesn't depend there, then of course the ecosystem and the purposefulness of what you're doing. So I get back to the dimensions. I really think it's a new way of thinking career, right? Where do I want to add? And just ask yourself, hey, what is really success for me? We're all icebergs, right? From the outside, it looks like we're successful. Maybe there's a lot of inner work. So what does that mean? And really define it for yourself. When will I feel successful for myself, independent from titles, whatever it is? I really feel this is what has helped a lot. Before we go to the question section, I have prepared also. I love how you called it the needs and leads section, right? So I thought, what can I offer to you? So it's really, I can help you, advisor, in leadership topics or in the education sector. I can help you with the outer work, of course, where to start, how to prioritize, which financial models work. For example, in Switzerland, I get often asked, hey, what does it mean for my pension, for my health insurance, and so on? That's important topics you have to take care of from the beginning. The inner work, of course, and then, what can you do for me? Well, if you know employers that are struggling to onboard fractional talent, I'll be happy to help. Where we can all help each other is, of course, that in the attention economy, that we help each other just by liking and commenting our comment. And if anyone knows a sales funnel expert, that's also something. So you see, you get the slide deck. I think it's always also interesting. How can we interact, right? And it goes both ways. So I look forward to meeting, to joining one of the leads and needs sessions, but I thought I include that. Now is really the time where I'm super happy to answer all your questions. Feel free to raise hands. And I'm seeing Minal, you commented. It's interesting to see how current students start exploring careers, with a different way, absolutely. So I also get lots of requests. For example, I just had a group of physics PhD students. I mean, academia is rethinking in the age of AI, right? So there, the portfolio concept is growing, absolutely. Feel free to raise your hand. I'm checking if there is any question so far.
We received a few comments here when you asked about the portfolio career. What would be the definition? So we had a comment from Yaravi mentioning that a group of services you can provide in different terms based on your experience and organization's momentum. We had Ioannis, you already mentioned extra volunteer roles and roles with social footprint. I think you mentioned a little bit about those as well. So very nice to see that people are also thinking about their own concept and description. And just inviting everyone here again for open questions, open comments. We're happy to provide you this space as well.
Yeah, please feel free to you can just either raise your hand or exactly. I think someone just salaries are low and job security declined. Alvaro commented. Yeah, but Minal, I think you have a question, right?
Yeah. Thank you for the session. This is great. I think intuitively, even within organizations, people kind of they have portfolio-like careers. Sometimes they look at it in hindsight and it kind of looks like a portfolio. And I think it's interesting to see how people are able to, based on your experience, how are people able to string that? And when is that aha moment that they have that, hey, actually, I've been doing this in existing organizations. Now I can monetize it outside.
Well, it is, as you say, it's a bit of an epiphany moment that happens for people in different stages, right? I mean, sometimes I have young mothers, right, realizing, hey, what I was doing there, I can only do a fraction of it, so I will start fractional, and then they start this reflection, but that's not the only case. Sometimes it's really just intrinsic, where people, I mean, in Switzerland, for example, you may remember UBS and Credit Suisse, UBS bought Credit Suisse, and that means we don't have two major banks, but just one. And there's lots of people that have been thinking, hey, how could I reuse my skills from my work in banking in other contexts, right? And that's been very interesting, where they started to do their inner work and realized, hey, let's say the client relationship management job, right? They dissected it in a way that they realized, hey, there's two aspects of it I could monetize in totally different fields. So that's another example. Those people were more forced into it, obviously, as there were massive layoffs. So it really depends a bit. And what's also nice, sometimes I hear people like, oh, you just gave a name to what I'm doing. Because, yeah, I remember that too, when, 10, 15 years ago, people would be like, you just don't know what you want. But one day you will decide for one thing and you will choose, I'm sure, right? And as you can see, I still do several things. I mean, I'm still, active. Hope that helps. You're welcome, Minal. I see David, you seem to have a question before I have a look at the chat then.
Yes, hi, thank you. That was very interesting. Just a question in the context of, if you've been working in executive career 10, 20, 30 years, and then you're thinking portfolio career, one of the things that I seem to see a lot, and I've only just started the discussion, is organizations really want you to, I mean, for want of a better word, introduce and sell. So it's like investing your relationships. And that seems to be the first discussion every time. Oh, who can you introduce us to? And then you think, well, I can do more than that. And it's just trying to work out to get away from being a network sales guy. That's an interesting challenge that I'm finding right now.
That's very interesting what you say, right? And it feels a bit like you're being instrumentalized, and they just want you for your network, and you're like, wait, I can do more. And what's important is how you enter those discussions. Be very clear from the start in terms of how you negotiate, what types of terms and conditions in such a mandate you have, right? Because otherwise they can just take your network and say, hey, thanks, David. Now we're done with you, right? And you don't want that. And then also it's your network, right? It takes time for you also to trust in, let's say, what type of product is this? What type of thing am I doing? So, I've had that. Probably some of you have been approached as well. There is this new trend of getting an email with, congratulations, you have been awarded the Leader of the Future Award, blah, blah, pay $500 and you will get featured in a journal. I'm like, no, I don't pay for PR. And this is not an award. This is a business model that, by the way, is really bad. And what I started, to be honest, especially when women are writing, I'm like, you should be ashamed for that. I mean, good work does not need to pay for an award. So some business models won't work. And there I've seen, these people are risking their reputation for such a business model. So, I think it's about carefully curating that as well. Ravi, you have your hand up as well, I see. Hi.
Hi,
did
how
I say
are
your name correctly? Did I?
You did it perfectly. Thank you.
Okay, good.
Thanks for the insights and for sharing. I wanted to ask if you can help us understand if there is a difference between when you are more like a generalist and then when you are very specific skill sets when you're positioning yourself in a portfolio career.
What's interesting, I still work, right? I do intercultural work. I do lots of facilitation on strategy and leadership. And this is really the brackets I use. And I'd say it kind of funneled, and that's also what it allowed me, right? In some way, sometimes I would look back at the year where I realized, okay, I worked with these 4 topics, and on these 2 companies always would get back to me again and ask me to do things. Okay, then there was COVID, and there was nothing, but that was really interesting also to see that evolution. But with some topics, for example, my topic on failure culture, this has been something where it's also that mix of preaching to the converted and having people that realize, hey, we should really look at how we deal with it. And for example, right now I have a company from the construction industry, and I'm doing, I think, the 4th workshop with them. And it's also interesting because I asked them, hey, where did you find my profile? and the innovation lead told me, oh, you know, my wife mentioned your name, and I checked and it made sense, and I don't know that wife. You know, I don't know her. So I really feel it's about in which aspects do we build our reputation. And what's interesting, I think she even knows me from something totally different than failure culture. So it's about how do we build our brand, and then it kind of evolves, and it also allows us, you know, to take things out of our portfolio. So I have one good friend was just telling me, oh, you know, I'm sick and tired of doing all those LinkedIn trainings. I think for next year, I take that out and we'll do more of Claude trainings, because she's amazing with AI, right? And she pivots herself into what gives her joy as well and what gives her energy. So let me have a look at
Yes, I was just gonna share with you a question from Ioannis. He asked, what's the best practice of using your LinkedIn profile, posts, announcements with PFC?
I look at it very holistic. So, you know, sometimes I post about myself as a lecturer, about my workshops. And what's been interesting, for example, I remember once I posted about finishing a mandate. I did the Global Female Entrepreneurship Week, which was a 2-year mandate where, you know, it was an amazing project funded by the state. And I said something, oh yeah, and by the way, I'm freeing up 20% of my time. And just by reading that, some people approached me. So I think that's also a good way, but of course, do it in a moment where you're not under pressure, because it's not about begging people for your project. That's super important. And that's really that subtle psychological thing, right? Being like, when are you open to like conversations? And I've done that, I think, 2 or 3 times. And it always led to interesting conversations where I thought, okay, those people who have me on their radar and are thinking about, you know, maybe onboarding me for change management projects and so on, it's good for them to intentionally also understand, hey, she's 70% busy, but right now she would have a capacity, right? So that's a good way of doing that. Maybe also get, you know, referrals, testimonials. I think that's the other thing, right? Because with a portfolio career, it's really, and I think that's also the beauty, because yeah, you need to have the personality for it. If your reputation is not good, it won't last long. Thanks a lot. Sandeep, I see you. Your hand is raised.
Yes.
Hello.
Well, thanks a lot, Andrea. I mean, it's my first interaction with the advisory board. Oh, very interesting. On this specific, on taking LinkedIn and resume CVs as an example, a week or so ago, a friend of mine asked me to give feedback on his CV and his LinkedIn profile. I said, hey, I don't know what you want. I don't know who you are. I mean, I was frank. He's a good friend, okay? Are you a technical guy? Are you a sales guy? Are you a biz dev? I mean, you present yourself in different ways. So if I am a person hiring manager, I don't know what this guy is, what he wants. But now I hear you say I might have given, you know, guidance to him, which in this context would have been incorrect guidance. How do you do a resume in this context?
Thanks a lot. So while you spoke, I just opened 2 pages. Let me share them. And I often speak about the context of having a now page. What's keeping me busy now? Because, you know, my CV looks at my past. It's about my expertise. But based on what am I building the future? So you have 2 examples of so-called now pages. And there is even this concept exists. You'll see it's linked. It's nownow.com. And it's really about talking, hey, how do I want to build my future? And maybe that's something you can still give a hint to your colleague, because, you know, a CV, just giving feedback on a CV, it's basically like this. You ask 5 experts, you go home with at least 7 opinions, and they will contradict each other, right? That's the reality. And I always say that, you know, there's some basics. I can give you feedback, but I will never be able to give feedback on a CV without knowing the job, the role, the description it's about, right? So you did something right. You're like, why should I give you feedback? And that's important, because the CV will always need to be adjusted. I always say have a master CV where all your experience, all your successes are listed, and then you'll have to adjust it to a certain position or board position, right? That's the important part. So I really think this is the way to go for me to have now pages, right? Because yeah, your CV, honestly, I can go and check LinkedIn, right? Most things I will see there. Yeah. I hope that helps, Sandeep.
Yeah. I'll enter your now page also. It's very useful.
Yeah,
also,
please check it out.
especially for me also. but nevertheless, if you look at LinkedIn, if you're doing, I mean, in view of portfolio careers, it's good to show that you have good experience in several fields in a certain way. But a typical headhunter or a typical hiring manager will say, well, who is this Sandeep? He does this, he claims he does this, and he claims he did that.
What's also important, I mean, with, you know, especially with LinkedIn, we know, right, with Brew 360, the algorithm has changed. So there is a lot going on. It's really about regularly auditing your LinkedIn profile and think, what is it? But then those things you talk about, is that consistent, right? Do you have people talking about you, commenting? Those interactions, they are worth a lot.
Agreed. Thanks.
You're welcome, Sandeep.
We had another question here on the chat from Nasima. The question was, could this model be a challenge for people who really need a collaborative approach and investing in teamwork dynamics? Is there a risk of feeling a bit lonely?
In German, we say jein, which is a mix of yes and no. And I think it really depends. So I have one friend, she is part of a facilitation conglomerate. So, you know, 30% of her time, she's part of a group. A portfolio career does not mean you're alone. It also does not exclude the possibility of being employed part-time. So I think that loneliness part, and you can even, you know, if still whatever you do is actually lonely, you can, I mean, I remember having things like content creation days, you know, I mean, who likes that self-advertising, doing posts about yourself? Like, I'll be very honest, you know, I like talking about topics, but there I'm also, so we would get together, you know, one day in a cafe and do it together. And in the break, we would discuss what are the challenges, what works well. So, you know, find your own masterclass, your peer group. And yeah, what you really need with a portfolio career is proactivity. You always need to be proactive about those topics. I mean, I invest a lot, for example, also in retreats. I really feel that, you know, once a year, I need 1 week where I really work not on the business, not in the business, but on my business, right? How do I want to be positioned? How do I want to reposition and so on? So that's one thing. I see David Thorne is asking, I assume it's also important to actively show you are available with the use work label. So 2 things. I have this vision that we'll have the portfolio careerist label on LinkedIn one day. I'm working on it. And honestly, the open work label, I have mixed opinions. I know in the US, it's very usual and it's okay. In Switzerland, it's totally don't do it. First of all, you can have it hidden, right? You know, there is this way that you're open to be found by recruiters without having the public thing. And in Switzerland, that's the official recommendation. For the German market, I observe very similar. Actually, most of my European contacts don't use it. So I don't know how it's in the US. Please feel free to challenge what I'm saying there. I feel it's much more normal to use it whenever you're open to work. Yeah, and then I'm just checking, even more curious. Oh, no. Yeah, that was the question, I think. So if anyone still has one.
Andrea, maybe I can add a question for the audience here. I was very interested about when you brought the mix of compensated and pro bono work that people can do in this sense. And you mentioned being strategic on your pro bono work. And I would love to hear your insights on what kind of aspects to take into consideration when thinking about the strategies behind pro bono work and how they can maybe push for even more compensated roles in the future or visibility?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Juliana. So usually criteria are either do you get something non-monetary in return, right? I mean, one thing is the expertise, right? Do you just work, or do you have an opportunity to, you know, shadow lead people? Will you actually be acquiring new skills as well, but with guidance? Because just doing the work and either you fail or you succeed is, you know, is a way to do it, but I would really not go. So I would be intentional about that. And I mean, I have been, you know, pro bono in boards, and I always said, hey, I want to build my exposure with that. I want to be able to show my expertise in certain areas. So that worked, right? Maybe there's other things in a non-monetary perspective. I have one person in my portfolio who, you know, is doing pro bono in the AI sector, right? Where she says, hey, I can attend all those courses and I'm learning so much, you know, if I had to pay for that. That's a way to look at it. And so you see, depending on your profile, the answer will vary, but what's important is really that you carefully curate what's in it for you and be open about it. So I've always been super transparent, and you know, what I do, for example, is clearly limit the time I would use, right? I can clearly say, hey, I do this 10 hours a month, not more. If it's more, it needs to be compensated, and so on.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the insights, Andrea.
You're welcome. Good. Minal, yeah, the energy is so important when building a portfolio career. Absolutely. You know, people that burn out from a portfolio career because it's just overwhelming if you don't build it intentionally. And that's really where the leadership, the self-leadership part comes in and is so important. So really think back in terms of, hey, what is a life well lived? So I'm really circling back to my very original question because, yeah, that's what you want to look back at, right? Especially in this moment, because portfolio careers are not about success in traditional terms, right? It's about you finding your own definition of success. Good.
If anyone has any comments or questions, last call. We are receiving lots of good comments here in the chat, Andrea. I feel like you're also reading those, but thank you so much. We have David here as well. Is there an age limit when you should stop? Yeah, good question.
No, you know, even, you know, we'll live so long, right? So no, I don't think so.
Sure.
Well, I think we can move towards the end, right? I don't think I have yeah, much more for me. It's really, I think I should even let me just stop the slide so we can just see each other one last time, and yeah.
Thank you so much, Andrea. Thank you all for joining. As Andrea mentioned, we'll be sharing the recording, and she kindly will share the slides with you all as well once the session finishes. It's a pleasure to be here and celebrate another year of VAB. Thank you, David. Thank you, Andrea, and everyone for attending.
Thanks to you, Natalia and Andrea. Huge congrats. And the great thing is that we have you now in our ecosystem as an active VAB member, so members can be reaching out, communicating with you. Thank you so much. Brilliant. And to my
David, yeah, if there's people in Switzerland, I was even talking to Christoph, and we even said in autumn, not now, not summer break, but in autumn, we could even consider doing an event together. So because he does interim management, which perfectly aligns with portfolio careers. So you see, like, the network is already totally being used. Yeah.
100%. Thank you so much. And to my team, please, the Brazilians, go best. You started 4:30 a.m. Please go.
Oh my gosh. Boa noite.
The community, thank you all, and happy 6th anniversary VAB, and a lot of great things to come. Thank you all for joining. Thanks, Gabs, Callum, Brady, Mems, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Cheers, everyone. Ciao, ciao.
Bye, everyone.